Oh, I see what you're looking at.
I said we already made a peace treaty. So we're getting ready for another. Now, we've already kind of seen, you know, gotten intel, if you will, into how Team Omegasniped will be pulling this dungeon. They're going to do a bit of the trash at the start as the rest of Druid runs all the way to the top. Luffy getting ready to cast a mass res on everybody, getting them up to that Agrinox platform. Seeing a pretty similar pull here, but we're getting a mage dip really low at the start. Fortunately, no proc from that Cauterize.
Yeah, but you've seen both sides, of course, you know, have their rest of Druids kind of skipping ahead. Feral Dog, of course, getting a little bit of a head start, going out there to be able to get ahead of the game and be able to have, like we said, that mass res that has been so important to be able to run with here. And at this point, you know, you're just kind of having Omegasniped. I think usually Luffy ran ahead a little bit earlier on their previous pull here, so it is, you know, the same affixes, the same level here. So interesting to see what happens. You're seeing Sickle going down on the side of Parse Culture here.
Yeah, I mean, there was a bit of pressure right off the start as I'm fired up, kind of dipped really low, so maybe kind of backtrack for a second, get that health back up, and then he went off after. We, of course, do have that Sanguini Zucchini affix along with the Grievous, so a bit of extra damage, and still the same care needs to be taken towards the mobs in order to kite them out of these zones on the ground, making sure they don't get healed. Snickle back down to 2%, luckily manages to heal up. They don't have the healer available, and that Grievous is really becoming a problem right now. That's what I was mentioning, the bit of extra damage. As soon as you dip below 90% HP, you will start to stack up that Grievous, going up to 5 stacks. That is just, I mean, a nightmare here without the healer.
It definitely is, and while you have some kind of self-healing going on, you know, the Health Stones, or just the Warlock being able to have access to it, you know, if there is any other kind of damage that's hitting after you, it can be so annoying to really deal with here. You're seeing Luffy on the side of Omegasniped, getting ahead of the game, being able to actually get that mass res off for everybody here, putting him directly into Agrinox's room, as Parse Culture is, of course, getting their mass death together. Now they've got all the rest of the trash completed here, so mass res should be going off, you know, for both sides, pretty much in sync with each other, together in about same terms of the trash percentage as well.
NSYNC actually hasn't been together for quite a while, Jack.
Oh, really?
Interesting fact, but Team Omegasniped just a bit late. Luffy getting to the party there for that res. They had to wait a bit dead for a few seconds because of that backtracking that you were talking about at the beginning of the dungeon. Everybody's resed up healthfully now, getting ready to pull a lot of this trash on the Agrinox platform. Big pull coming here from Hadrian. But he opts to not pull that kind of far flower pack, but we have seen teams pull those flowers with Agrinox at the same time. So similar pulls coming in from the teams here, making sure to get interrupts on that caster, especially for the rejuvenations.
Important to note, Parse Culture is using their Bloodlust here. Omegasniped has opted not to, as we were talking about here. So it might just be like you mentioned, you know, having Lust off the pull, being able to pull those extra flower packs in with the boss, popping Lust, being able to get them shut down very quickly here. You are, you know, of course, carrying over their Bloodlust the last couple seconds here into those last couple mobs, but I really would have liked to see them actually have a little bit more use out of it, because it does look like they are going to have maybe a little bit of bleed over, you know, maybe 5 or 6 seconds wasted here, whereas Omegasniped's getting full duration up and available and pulling it into the trash over here.
Yeah, and I mean, Team Omegasniped ended up killing the trash just as fast without the Bloodlust too. Agrinox has now been pulled for Team Omegasniped on the right side of the screen, trying to move the boss a bit closer towards that fountain area, making sure they're filtering these lashers that do fixate players in as quickly as possible. If those lashers do reach the players, they explode for a devastating amount of damage. Definitely want to keep those away. You see them going through that 70% slow on the D&D, exploding and not hitting anyone there. Now, the other important part about this fight, Jack, that we always discuss is the Succulent Lasher. Probably the most important and dangerous part of the fight. It does do substantial amount of damage to the tank and has some area denial on the ground as well. See some of that green goop right now on Team Omegasniped.
Yeah, the Succulent you really need to watch out for, as, of course, you know, second that it does end up spawning, when there is a lot of cleave damage, there is a lot of, you know, passive cleave going on, you need to make sure the tank is able to instantly get the taunt out onto it, make sure it doesn't actually hit anybody else around it, because again, you are having these more heavily, you know, melee-based compositions coming in. Feral Dog, of course, being in Feral Affinity here, as well as Kassan and Big Kent being able to be crowded around in melee. So very important to be able to watch that. Make sure you're, of course, getting all your flowers funneled in there, that way you'll be able to quickly cleave all of them down here. So very important to have the strong ad control.
You know, we're mentioning how Team Omegasniped really kind of killed the trash at the same rate without that Bloodlust that Parse Culture ended up using, but Parse Culture not too behind on the boss, not having that Bloodlust either. Just actually the gap is widening now. It was about 5%, 6% when I kind of had this thought in my head, and now they're proving me wrong as they start to skyrocket ahead. Team Omegasniped with almost a 20% lead over Parse Culture, looking to chop Agrinox down and get started towards the trash leading to Thrashbite. A lot of dangerous trash there, but we've seen them doing so flawlessly, and we know they like to do that huge pull, everything except for Gazerax in that room, so we'll have to keep an eye on what they do in another 7%. But Parse Culture now starting to kind of, you know, close the gap between between the two teams, now down to 10%, but they will be a bit slower to down the boss.
Yeah, and then when that execute finally does end up kicking in, they are doing quite well to be able to kind of start dealing with it here. You were seeing Jason just dropping quite low, but at this point, it's been very well played by them, making sure they've been able to actually get it down and taken care of, and they're almost right behind here, but it will be a big test to see if Parse Culture is going to have that same setup going on, if they will be able to, of course, pull that entire room, be able to take care of having all the Sanguine focused into that one area. That way, when they pull Gazer Axe, they don't even have to worry about any of the other extra splashes getting in the way.
So Team Omegasniped, as we mentioned, does do that huge pull here in this room. Likely will follow suit to what we saw in the previous, or 2 series ago rather, when they did everything in the room. They do have already aggroed everything. Everything's coming around the corner. Line of sight, well done by them. And now they have to make sure that they kill everything equally to make to see that there's no extra Sanguine healing on these mobs. That's the most dangerous part, especially because there's a lot of casters here. And we see the good punt coming up. I was just going to say there's a lot of forced cast too that you can't interrupt.
And Parse Culture here following Sloot and following, of course, that Omegasniped strategy, just pulling everything in all together. They do well to kind of put everything underneath the stairs here, make sure they're kind of getting it all out of the way. There is, of course, the Purgatory proc by Jason as he does put all those mobs on top of each other. He took a ton of damage there from, of course, all the fell blast coming out from those imps. So very good job being able to recover from that. He has tons of RP to be able to actually have pooled up here to be able to kind of drag all those mobs away, and also having a clear route so you're not having to walk through the Sanguini to get up the stairs.
Did you say they're following Sloot?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Okay. Team Omegasniped working on Gazer Axe here, the final trash mob before they spawn Thrashbite, the second boss of the dungeon. Bit of a mini boss here. You can't outrage his pulsing damage that comes after a few of these Fell Glare casts on the tank, but by doing so, unless you have abilities that you can cast 40 yards or greater, you will just be sitting there by yourself doing nothing. So we'll see a lot of healing coming out of Luffy. Last time I believe they did pop that Tranquility, making sure that everyone's healed up nice and healthy for this Focus Destruction. We're seeing similar casts come out here. No Tranquility this time, I don't believe, but everyone seems to be in good shape here. But we do have the extra pressure this time of that Grievous.
Yeah, the Grievous pressure really can stack up very quickly there. But I believe he was actually just ending up using his Ganir into Flourish there right after his Wild Growth cast there. You just kind of be able to capitalize and bring all the health pools back up on top. So at that point, when they're, especially if you do end up running Velens, you have a lot of bleed over extra healing that will quickly be able to be redirected through Velens. So in that way, it makes things so much easier. And now Team Omegasniped already pulling Thrashbite as Parse Culture is just now finishing off Gazer Axe.
Yeah, they're really not too far behind, but it might come down to one of those death differential maps really close between the two teams. We do have 2 extra deaths on Parse Culture's side, so that's an extra 10 seconds in favor of Team Omegasniped. Thrashbite now spawning for us, throwing his weapon around the outside, whirling any player caught, and that will likely be one shot. Main mechanic here really is he will fixate one of the players. We see it now on Zyronic as he kind of runs into the belly of that bookcase, making sure that the boss's hitbox impacts with the bookcase before the actual player, shattering it down and then having to deal with these 2 books, which are for losers, Jack.
You and Thrashbite together, hating the knowledge. But you're seeing a very good ad control there. When you do smash that bookcase, there is going to be 2 books popping out. They'll have a variety of casting and slow. There's be some mind controls, but very good asphyxiate, followed up by, of course, the quick interrupts to make sure they're shutting those ads down. They're not going to be having, the threat like we've seen in the past of the slow right as Thrashbite ends up smashing the ground there. So at this point, they are really well set up, just moving out of this last slam coming out here, and they will be able to pull off, like we were saying, like we were watching in the past, that big pull, getting all of those imps and scavengers in together before they escape to the portal.
Thrashbite does go down, and they're going to turn another page and go on to the next chapter of this dungeon as they get ready for this big pull that you were alluding to, Jack. Going to see a lot of slows coming up here, the AoE grip right away, and likely we will see the Ring of Peace that will kind of get the initial funnel between all the mobs. D&D does go down for that 70% slow, up for 10 seconds. But once again, they want to make sure not to get any hard CC on them when they're low HP. They don't want to get that Sanguini healing going on the mobs. The mobs are slowed, and they just absolutely get obliterated and melt, but they are starting to run through some of that Sanguine. Nonetheless, well done by them, and we do know from the previous series that they were in on this dungeon, they will be skipping these Enforcers at the start along with the Orbcaster and just getting started on Nalasha after killing, I believe, a couple of spiders on the side to get to that 94-95%.
I believe last time they did end up killing both sides of spiders there before they did go off. But I think at this point, they may have just been a little bit ahead on trash because they should be able to acquire more than at least 5% to be able to actually get enough trash before, of course, they engage with Dominatrax, and then the final 5% from there. So overall, overall, they're just waiting for this Orb Caster to walk by. You're going to see Luffy actually putting out the Entangling Roots on it, so it won't actually be patrolling backwards to them. At this point, they kind of cut the room in half here, but they do reduce a lot of the needless trash that they would have to kill, because of course those Enforcers have a ton of HP and award 0 trash percentage.
So we're seeing the blink here from Nalasha, the first one. She blinks to one of the players and then does a huge frontal cone, slowing everyone involved. The closer you are, of course, the easier it makes it to dodge. She doesn't blink very far. You just kind of sneak to the side or behind her, and no harm done. But the real harm comes in the form of that poison dot. Oh no, somebody got just a bit too close to the Enforcers and that Orb Caster, so they're going to have to deal with them now on the side, on top of the dangerous dot from the Spiderlings that we were just discussing. Luffy does go down. We have Zongo getting really low with a bleed from frontal from those Enforcers that teams often opt not to pull. Sitting there casting in that Sanguine as well. This is looking to be an absolute nightmare, Jack.
It definitely is. You're seeing Zongo there, just need to be able to get those bleeds off of him as rapidly as possible. Hadrian doing an excellent job being able to actually clear out, pick up all those mobs very quickly here. Very good awareness to be able to dodge that Orb Caster as they are going out here. We'd like to see, a little bit more help from Zongo to be able to continuously clear off a lot of the stacks, because Hadrian, with all of these extra spiders going down, because it has taken so much longer to be able to kill them, is going to need quite a bit of support. You're seeing Fired Up, of course, cauterizing and using his Ice Block to make sure that he's able to remove his own poison that's coming out here. And at this point, they really need to make sure they're stabilizing Hadrian. He hasn't actually procced his Purgatory yet, but you're seeing Zongo going down, taking a quick hit there. They have one battle res left available to them. Whether or not they want to use it or not, it will be their last one for quite a while.
Yeah, I don't think they do. The pack's almost dead. Nalasha does go down. The Enforcers can be cut around in circles. Not too dangerous if they're not connecting in that melee range right now, as the tank kind of starts to kite away. But they do need to hang on to res Zongo. Those Spiderlings still continuing to stack a lot of poison on that Blood DK. Just do so much damage, stacking up to 5. Trying to get those Dispels out every 8 seconds as quick as possible. Zongo, as you said, was lending some support in the form of those Dispels. But of course, he's dead now, has eventually released, and they will be moving up.
Yeah, at this point, they're not really... At this point, they're still ahead, but like you mentioned, they are equal in terms of deaths, and we've seen, with how clean both these teams have been playing in general, it really is paying off for them when they're able to actually, have these cleaner pulls and have the stronger execution here. But at this point, when Omegasniped ends up pulling everything and they did use their invisibility potions, it might be a little bit of a disadvantage if they're not having that second pot going into Domitrax and Mephisroth.
Yeah, it could be a problem. We are moving now into the third boss room, and fourth boss room, Domitrax. The name of the game here is you want to, well, it's actually World of Warcraft, but aside from that, you do want to pull the boss over to the front half of the room, as he will spawn the first 2 portals there at 90% HP. From these spawn some imps that aren't too dangerous, but do need to be kept in check. They melee quite hard, and their cast itself is about 45 melee HP. So you're going to see Zyronic likely banish one of them, proccing that Cephas if he's wearing it, and the other DPS nuking down the first portal keeper. Now, if the gate or the portal keepers are left alive too long, they will spawn kind of one of those fell fiends that does a ton of pulsing damage to the group. Want to make sure you're killing those right away. The teams also have to kind of pay some attention to that chaotic energy, Jack, that we talk about, making sure that they go to the middle of the room before that 100 energy hits.
Always important to be able to get into the Aegis of Agrimar there when the chaotic energy starts going off. Whenever you're in the Aegis, you deal less damage, healing, and of course you take quite a bit less damage. So whenever you're seeing any, the heal cast going off, like the wild growth right after that, the chaotic energy hits the entire group. Always very important to make sure you're standing out of the Aegis of Agrimar before it actually lands. That way you're not going to be facing that healing reduction.
Yeah, so we do see teams often, as we're seeing here, the DPS is kind of chilling at the top of the screen. You've seen for Omegasniped. You want to kind of force the next chaotic energy before the 50% mark, because that's when he summons his next 2 set of portals with, of course, the Shivar as well. These are more dangerous, and I shiver at the thought of them getting into the group and nuking them all, because they do have an AoE Shadow Whirlwind that will punt players out of the area. So the last thing you want is one of them sneaking in to that Aegis right before the chaotic energy hits, punting everyone out and wiping the group. So they do well there to wait. And now they're going to pop some CDs. We do see the Bloodlust come up for 4 of the players, not the mage, of course, in this case, which is why you still see a CD on your screen to get as much damage as they can and make sure they get rid of the portals and, as a result, the mistresses before the next chaotic energy.
Yeah, they do very well to only have one of the Shivaras up. The other one is, of course, going to be a Zyronic's banished target for that constant Sephuz proc there. They do very well, and I love being able to have like the Bloodlust here. It does make things so much easier on the entire party when you're able to actually just burn those down so rapidly here. So many less targets to actually deal with. They don't gain crazy amounts of extra damage from cleave at this point for a single target, a little bit with maybe the Warlock there. But at this point, they just want to be able to focus as hard as possible onto that single target damage, where on the side of Parse Culture, 38% left on Domitrax, they opt to actually hold on to their lust.
Yeah, not too much separating these two teams, but it's just coming down to single target check right now. We are going to have those group of 4 bats spawn. Really not too much danger for any of the groups. They both should be able to chew through it very quickly, but it's just going to come down to who has more damage for these bosses. Single target sustained for the remainder. Mephistroth will spawn for 40 seconds at the beginning of the pull before he starts his phase 2. A bit of a shorter phase 1 compared to the rest of his energy bar, as he does start around 50, 60 energy, something like that. So you can actually get a full Bloodlust on Mephistroth the moment he spawns before he goes to that second phase.
Yeah, that's what they're really going to be looking to do here, as Dominatrax is down to 10% here for Parse Culture, and they really need to be able to get this down, get the trash started to be able to get onto this, because at that point, the Lust is going to be their biggest advantage here to be able to go into this fight. Luffy, I think, really is stepping it up in terms of the trash damage going into this, but I would like to start seeing a lot more on the boss damage. We've seen a lot of times where Feral Dog has out DPS'd him quite consistently here, and when Omegasniped is not going to be able to have any combat potions available because of the invisibility potions that was used, they really need to be able to pump out as much damage as possible here.
And you know what? I mean, Feral Dog will be needing to keep up that damage too if they have any hopes of catching Team Omegasniped right now. But we do begin here on Mephistroth, the final boss of the dungeon for Team Omegasniped. We do have that 40 seconds at the beginning here, of course, dealing with those fissures on the side. Players want to drop those off. Make sure you get out of the big green circles, as it will deal a substantially larger amount of damage compared to just the pulse on the group, which is already pretty high to begin with. Players making sure to spread out, not to splash any of the shadow damage either that we just saw their pulse on the screen right now. And of course, there is that Carrion Swarm on the tank. Not too much damage standing in the kind of goop on the ground that the Swarm leaves, but the Swarm frontal itself does deal a fair bit of damage.
The frontal, you do have to watch out for. A lot of times, if you're not going to see too much, garbage on the ground, it will be because, the frontal is very well planted into the walls there that you have to deal with. At this point, you are playing soccer, you are dodging, or you are, blocking any of the goals that could be going out there. Lust goes out for Parse Culture as they're engaging with Mephistroth, but they did have one death. They got the quick battle res out, get him up very quickly here. And this is, like you said, they're able to have that full Bloodlust duration. They need to be able to pump out as much damage as possible to be able to catch up here. You're seeing Feral Dog doing what he can to be able to contribute in terms of damage here. But at this point, they really need to be able to catch up, because leaving the first intermission here, Omegasniped, about 55% HP.
Yeah, I mean, the rest of this is just, they're not going to have another transition phase at this level and level of gear that they have. Mephistroth at 55% right now entering the phase, whilst we have Parse Culture entering their transition phase at 55%. So definitely more damage done in favor of Parse Culture at the start there with respect to that Bloodlust, but they do have to go through this entire phase that has a set duration. And of course, should they fail on one of those balls, hit Illidan in the phase, it will extend the duration of this transition phase by about 4 or 5 seconds. But I'm sure they've practiced a lot and will not allow that to happen. But they're going to need a phenomenal amount of damage coming out of this phase, especially because we're about to have Bloodlust come up for the majors, just a little extra boost for Team Omegasniped.
Yeah, they have that little bit of extra advantage going into it, while Parse Culture does have to take quite a bit of time to be able to go through this phase. So 30% left on Mephistroth for Omegasniped. Parse Culture at 51%. The only one death differential favoring, of course, Omegasniped here. So at this point, Omegasniped just need to be able to burn this boss as rapidly as they possibly can. Try to make sure that they're not going to be getting into, one more transition phase, because that really would be the opening for Parse Culture to kind of pull ahead here.
They should be all right. I mean, the phase 1 just has so much, it takes so much time to go to phase 2 once you have a 0 energy bar in Mephistroth. And indeed, they do down it, and Omegasniped takes that first game convincingly, just an equal performance to what we saw in that previous series 2 series ago.
Early advantage going to Omegasniped. Now, I do want to go ahead and just jump right to, they had a little bit of trouble when they got to the spiders there. Certainly there were some hiccups, and it could have been more costly, but I really like how they stabilized there. They made sure that the losses were minimal. They didn't panic as the Rogue died, and looking really, really good there. Sorry, Windwalker.
Yeah, I'm so used to seeing Zongo on the Rogue, of course, but he is on his Windwalker here for some of these higher level keys. And really, the MVP kind of has to go out to Hadrian for doing such an excellent job being able to quickly stabilize the position that Omegasniped was in, being able to actually get everybody in together there. It was excellently played.
Yeah, Omegasniped, when we saw them in the upper bracket initially, they were having some hiccups, obviously, against Dark Slashers, and they weren't necessarily looking anywhere near as strong as they have. But I do like what we are seeing from, I would say, the top 4 teams from the Americas. They took the learnings from day 1, and they are really applying them, and they are looking a lot crisper, a lot more solid. When things are happening, they're not panicking. They are just saying, okay, what do we have to do to stabilize for the moment? Don't throw away the lead we have. And Omegasniped, again, comes out of this with the advantage as a result. Now, we are in the 23s, looking at the comps. Sloot, what are we doing?
I mean, we do have, both teams have a Warlock right now, so wouldn't be shocked to see Arcway. Not a huge advantage, kind of like we saw in the previous 2 series ago, rather, where there was Mage and Mage, but they never ended up visiting Bear Age. Now, there is a Mage, but it's in favor of Omegasniped. So Next dungeon, you know, we could see an Arcway. There's Double Warlock. Could see a lot of different options. But should they win that map and send it to? Should Parse win that map and send it to the game 3? You know.
I mean, that's the 23s. That is the way the map pool checks out. Jack, anything you want to add, or are you basically agreeing with that assessment?
That really is been the meta that we've been continuously seeing, even out of Europe. You know, it was almost constantly for every single series here. So I'm not expecting too much variance coming out of it.
Yeah, for sure. And as we look to the next 2 series, we will, of course, be heading to the 24 pool, where that will not be an option. So teams will have to prove they can do it really both ways. They're adhering to the meta of the 23 map pool, and then, of course, looking to 24. But for now, Team Omegasniped has the advantage. Will they be able to close it out, or will Parse Culture force a map number 3? We'll find out on the other side of this break. We talked a little bit about maps of this series before the break. Now, we are going to be heading, it turns out, to Lower Karazhan. For the affix, we'll play a little bit of a game. Pretend you don't know. This affix the question will be, what is your favorite fiendish droid general from the Star Wars universe?
Skittish.
Bursting?
No, it's Grievous.
Ah, okay.
Fools. I think there was only one character that was described as a fiendish droid general, so...
Oh, there's
that was going to be my next.
And you two actually knew the answer before we came into this, so this is... You two are just being cut-ups, but... Lower Karazhan, Grievous, that has what has been selected by Parse Culture. Sorry, that did not go the way I thought it would go.
Yeah.
I'm a cut.
It never does.
No, it never does with this desk, does it? Parse Culture, though. They're going to look to get it done on Lower Karazhan with that Grievous Affix, and again, they need to get this win to stay alive in this tournament.
They really do, and this is something we've seen. I believe we've already seen the lower Kara coming out from Parse Culture in the past, as they're trying to make their way out of the lower brackets going forward. So at this point, if they've already been playing it, they've already been practicing very hard for it. When they when we of course had Apex games yesterday, when they got knocked down to the lower bracket, they said, okay, well, we know what we need to be practicing on here. So pretty natural, and also kind of a nice break from the Arcway.
Yeah, we're all super excited. It's like we've been to the Arcway a lot. Can we go somewhere else for vacation?
Yeah, let's go to BRH instead. Haven't seen that one in a while.
Yeah, I think at this point, every single map that is not those two for me, I'm like, great, let's go. Let's have a great time. We are almost ready to go ahead and get into this map, though. Again, for these teams, everything on the line. If they win, they advance. If they lose, okay, there's a certain dramatic thing I'm supposed to do here, but we're just going to get into the map. Sloot's ruined the moment. Thanks for nothing, Sloot. Go enjoy your quiet alone time with Jack.
Oh,
Hi, Sloot.
Oh, hi, Jack. Fancy meeting you here yet again. You know what I wanted to say in that segment, but Rob was just taking so long to spurt out his words.
So he robbed it from you?
Yes, he did rob it from me, indeed. Is that we've seen a huge variance in performance of the lower Karas across, especially this region, this weekend. Just absolute nightmares in this dungeon, and some really good runs coming from some of these teams. So it's going to be really interesting to see kind of which category these teams fall in. Hopefully, since it's a forced map as well, at least at the 22 level, we're not going to see too many kind of hiccups between the two teams, but definitely interested to see which kind of boss routes they take as well.
Yeah, and at this point, a lot of times you are seeing, Faradog not really getting too much of an advantage here. You are seeing Jason just kind of holding, waiting a little bit for Feral to kind of get a little bit of distance here before they pull the rest of the mobs in here. So the standard setup where you're actually able to have your Rested Druid run ahead, start the RP event going into the Opera. We are having Beauty and the Beast, and then having your tank sky-stepping, running down, collecting, of course, all of the rest of the mobs leading up to this. And by the time that the damage starts ramping up, that you have to start dealing with this, then you're going to be able to quickly top them off and being able to take care of it. You're seeing Jason popping Purgatory there. Quick Gorfine's coming out for Hadrian on the side of Team Omegasniped here. Getting the stuns, he just needs to be able to pull off that runic power to be able to heal himself up here. Pretty equal coming out.
So both teams getting their 5 to 8% trash, depending on how much they want to grab. And if they grab that patrol as well, we're seeing that excellent side scroller coming out of World of Warcraft onto the left side of the screen as Parse Culture gets there. 7%, heads downstairs and hoping for that RP to finish quickly in the Opera event, which is what the healers, of course, immediately stealth and go do. Because it does take a while. It takes a minute and a half, something like that. We will be starting that Beauty and the Beast event in just a moment, as you said, Jack. Team Omegasniped just a bit slower moving here, finishing off that Spirit that, of course, they controlled Undead with that Blood DK at the beginning of the dungeon, having a very slight lead on trash. Not a huge deal considering the amount of trash that will come after this first boss.
A lot of opportunities, and we've even seen quite a bit of variance in the routes people are taking. A lot of opportunities to be able to kind of quickly catch up on the trash mobs here. I love that view coming in for Omegasniped here, the chandelier, and of course the paintings on the wall, on the ceilings there. Bloodlust going out for both teams here, engaging with the Beauty and the Beast.
Really good that nobody's swinging from said chandelier right now. Does not want to be crashing down on the stage.
Oh, I see ya.
But the name, I gotta stop saying the name again. I don't know why I say that so much. I talk too much to Rich is the problem. So what we want to see here from the teams is you have to kill all 3 of the kind of kitchen appliances before you get access to Coggleston, the stove in the back, who is currently immune to damage. But it is important to note that every time you kill one of them, the other ones will heal up to max HP. So unless you're getting some kind of effective single target DPS from cleaving or multi-dotting the mobs, you probably shouldn't be doing it outside of looking phenomenal in the eyes of Twitch chat.
You're seeing both teams focusing down Mrs. Cauldrons, and then, like you said, making sure they're focusing down at Bablet, of course, once all the mobs end up healing up here. And at this point, very similar order that you were going out here. You want to be able to, get off Mrs. Cauldrons as rapidly as possible because of those single target nukes that are going out. And then Bablet forcing, of course, your members of your group to start, kiting around as Broom that will be chasing after you. That will, of course, accelerate if it touches any of the flames there. So at that point, you have a lot of advantages once you're able to burn both of them down with Lust very rapidly, and then just work on Luminor here. Luminor,
the last one to fall for both teams. Both teams looking just pretty much, completely matched up right now. They have Bloodlust used 2 seconds apart, Battle Res available on either side, Luminor going down almost milliseconds, seconds apart between the 2 of them, and now they're getting ready on Coggleston.
Well, taking down, of course, like you said, the Cobalt Luminor. They did not take his candle, but they did take his life as both teams are working on the Coggleston here. Very important to be dealing with those forks that will be spawning, and actually the buffs that will go out onto them. Having to watch out for those very nasty bleeds, especially when you're able to have, double melee on the side of Parse Culture here.
Jack, you're really going to have to put a fork in these jokes right now. We have to continue this very serious dungeon here. Now, you do have to get interrupts on those casts on the forks. If I'm not mistaken, you can actually spell steal a haste buff that they get. So, you know, a bit of an advantage for Team Omegasniped in that sense. There is also that cast that debuffs the tank with increased damage taken, if I'm not mistaken, 75%. A lot of bleeds on Zongo right now. Managed to heal him up. They do have to get over that 90% threshold, which they do to make sure they get rid of that Grievous, which is present in this dungeon. A bit extra damage coming out on the side of Parse Culture, which did kill Luminor technically last by about a second or two. So they do pump that single target damage just a bit faster and start moving on to that backstage area. Both teams now do.
Yeah, at this point, you know, both of them are fairly equal going into this. Only the real difference is just going to be the fact that Jason does not have access to Purgatory here. So it'll be interesting to see if he does end up opting to go all the way down the stairs here. He's just getting everything in together. He will need to move and step very quickly to make sure he's getting all of that grouped up. And for the side of Omegasniped here, you're seeing Hadrian. Just looks like he's just kind of kiting everything out just a little bit here. He is kind of taking his time forming the pool, but he will go all the way down the stairs. You're seeing Sky Step Potions being used on the side of Omegasniped. Parse Culture stepping up a little bit ahead, getting into those spotlights here to get those very, very large eye beams. Huge damage by the Windwalker and the Demon Hunter there to be able to melt these trash packs.
Yeah, I mean, these huge pools in this dungeon are a lot less stressful for the tanks compared to the forced version of the map that we see from Blizzard. We don't have that necrotic now, so they can kind of freely run through as long as they can handle the damage. They can just well deal and sit there and tank and help with some of the damage for the DPS as well, rather than kiting and resetting their stacks. We see both teams just absolutely melting these packs. Now moving upstairs to the main or the front stage area, where they will deal with some of these ushers, of course, and eventually pull that huge pull with some more ushers likely in front of the stage.
And being able to actually take the time to get these ushers, you're actually seeing them desyncing, you know, when they're actually pulling them in together here. So you will have to kind of deal with two different timers on the flashlights there, taking a little bit of extra time, but it does allow them to actually get all the audience members up together when there's cooldowns available. As you're seeing Omegasniped not even having to worry about waiting on them, actually just pulling all the audience here, and I believe that they are grabbing a couple ushers in that mix there. The Fire Mage just absolutely able to obliterate them.
Yeah, I mean, these mobs really remind me of, I mean, an Usher I once knew. They do finish them all off and are ready to move over to... now, it's going to be interesting to see here between the two teams. Are they going to go to Maiden, or are they going to go to Morose? Or we even see saw some pulls, of course, with Limit in one of the previous series where they kind of had purposeful deaths, 3 of them, and then went to Morose, then Adamant, and all the way back to Maiden through the Spider Wing. So kind of decision-making time here for Omegasniped as they get to this middle foyer area. Do they go to the right for Morose, or do they go to the left for Maiden, Jack? What do you think?
I think at this point, when they are clearing out a lot
I think that Zongo died as well.
Zongo is down and out of it, and they do need to make sure they're kind of getting him up here. But at this point, I don't see why they wouldn't actually just take the path going on in Maiden here. It has been a lot more popularized. We have seen it a lot of times. So at this point, you know, when you're working on just making sure you're perfecting this dungeon here, I think that is just to be the more natural route here for Omegasniped. Having, you know, just at this point, they just need to make sure they get everybody up here. You are seeing Feral Dog on the side of Parse Culture going down, but they are expending the battle res on him. Kind of surprising to see.
Yeah, they probably could have survived without it, but they do want to make sure. I believe there's still some ushers in their pack. Yeah, we do see those flashlights go off, so that is quite a bit of damage on the groups, especially in this fortified setting, regardless of the fact that they turn their backs. I mean, it's still going to nuke you for a fair bit of damage. Wanted to make sure, just play it really safe, as you said. No extra deaths on the board, but they don't have that battle res available for about 3 minutes now. Both teams will, of course, in 3 minutes get an extra charge of battle res. Team Omegasniped still has theirs available to them, doing the huge pull down the hall, along with Maiden that we've seen some teams do, and just making sure that they get all the proper CC, some Blood Elf Silence as well on these mobs, as they get some really effective and efficient cleave onto Maiden from this trash.
Yeah, at this point, you know, this isn't too surprising considering they actually have the Fire Mage, you know, with them. So I really do like being able to have these larger pulls because he's just able to obliterate so many of these mobs. The extra cleave damage, the trash density here has been so favorable to them. Interesting to see if Parse Culture will follow suit here, being able to actually pull right up to it, which they have done in the past here. You are seeing them go taking it up there, and again, as Hadrian did last time on those 22s, pulling it up to the pillar, allowing the line of sight here, and then you are, of course, engaging with it. So very even pulls here coming out of both teams.
Absolutely very even pulls on either side right now. Bit behind, though, in in favor, or not favor, rather, of Parse Culture. Not too behind, though, but they do have the 2-death difference, and actually seeing some deaths on the board right now. A 3rd death on the tank, and it looks like it's going to be a full wipe from this, so they just can't handle the immensity of the pull that Team Omegasniped just masterfully did on the right side of the screen. They're unfortunately going to have to release, unless they got the pylon down in the corner, which I believe they did, so they will be able to res up and pull the boss here, but all that trash that they lost there, they will have to backtrack and grab either with the boss or after the boss dies. Maiden of Virtue now hitting 48% for Team Omegasniped on the right side of the screen, and she's now getting ready to do her first Mass Repentance shield combo on the group. I believe they haven't done it yet, right? Oh, sorry, I do see now the 3rd Consecrate on the side of the screen, so she's already done her first one. The dream here, of course, would be to beat the 2nd one. I'm not sure if they're going to be able to, because the first one they got to was above 50%. 100%.
Yeah, and it really shows, you know, whenever you are seeing, you know, the larger pulls coming out, a lot of times it does go focus into a lot of the extra cleave damage there. And I think the difference is in between the comps that you're seeing right now, you know, where you're able to have the Fire Mage just completely obliterate the trash. It was taking such a long time for Parse Culture to actually be able to get all of that trash down. And there was, like you said, still some remaining. So Parse Culture actually opts to release instead of taking advantage of the pylon, or maybe the pylon had actually failed for them. So they are actually just getting themselves over to Morose's room here, and they're starting to clear out some of the trash because they will have Lust back in about 2 minutes.
And, you know, really no surprise to see this. I mean, they probably want to try and do that trash pull with Maiden. It would be pretty inefficient to just pull Maiden in the trash after. So they really go over to the Morose's room. As you said, Maiden of Virtue now at 4% for Team Omegasniped, about to fall here in a moment. And then they will head over likely to Morose's room and do a similar pull. Both teams will probably use Bloodlust rather on Morose, I want to say. Not sure about Parse Culture, as they are just now finishing up cleaning up his room, so I don't think they're just going to wait around for the 2 minutes and 15 seconds unless they decide to head to Adamant first. Team Omegasniped running over desperately now to get to Morose's room.
Yeah, I think we've seen, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe Parse Culture actually ended up pulling the Smiths when they went down to Morose's room, but then when they went down to Adamant's room, and then they ended up pulling all the other horses in to be able to deal with that. So you might actually end up seeing them getting themselves ready and taking care of some of the kitchen after Morose to be able to more easily go on to Adamant here. But I am interested, like you said, because they will have to backtrack going into Maiden's room here no matter what they're doing.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, yeah, I can't remember if Omegasniped was the one that pulled everything with Adamant or if that was Limit, but either way, both of them kind of did the drop into Morose's stable area and then proceeded to do eventually a massive pull. No, Limit were the one that's actually pulled everything from the outside of the room. I do remember now. And Team Omegasniped kind of jumped on top of the Morose area. We'll see what they do nonetheless soon. 90 seconds or 85 seconds left on Bloodlust for Team Omegasniped, just kind of prepping the area, making sure there's a lot of space for them to move with Morose. We always do have the same 4 guests on Morose, as we see here on Parse Culture side, who has already pulled the boss down to 87% now.
Yeah, at this point you are seeing, of course, them taking down Crispin here. They always have to be dealing with that Will Breaker that will be coming out, that will, of course, be targeting one of the range players. So usually they'll just end up targeting Snickle if he's staying too far out there. And very important just to be able to make sure you have a predictability of where it's going to be going. Usually you can just get grips and any kind of other displacement to be able to actually interrupt it, but it's always important to make sure that, you know, even if it doesn't interrupt or doesn't get interrupted, you're able to actually have some predictability as to where it is going to be going here. So you're seeing Millstripe going down as well. Feral Dog, very happy to see that he's not getting mana drained as they were previously. So it's very clean play going into Morose here for Parse Culture.
And doing really well to interrupt that mana drain. We saw them come out. Now, both the remaining mobs, Darius and Druger, do come out. One of them do throw that whirling weapon on the side, which can be easily baited by the players, just making sure you avoid it. But the real pain in the butt comes from the whirlwinding in the middle of melee. You can actually bait out, I believe it's Darius that does the whirlwinding. So somebody can run out, bait him, and then he will jump to the side, as we're seeing on the right side of the screen for Parse Culture, on the right side of their screen, which is on the left side. He jumps out and starts slowly whirlwinding back to his main target, which of course is the tank. So they're doing a really good job here, keeping them away from the melee area so that we see Cass get a lot of damage in for the Windwalker without much danger. Team Omegasniped not far behind, 76% on Morose. Ferenc has died.
Yeah, at this point, you know, the Feral Dog is dropping so low here, as I believe he's taking his second Garrote stack, as everybody in the group has actually been applied Garrote here, and they don't have any other ways to actually get it removed here.
Not yet, it's just Snickle.
Oh, it's actually on Snickle, okay. So you are seeing, of course, just the huge damage there, but they're also getting really backed into a corner here. 10% left onto it. It's a great target that it is going out onto Snickle there. That way they'll be able to actually continuously be draining life, getting a lot of extra healing help there. Feral Dog doing great to Displacer Beast away, and very strong focus here by Feral Dog to make sure everyone's staying topped off. It can be such a pain on Grievous to be able to deal with it, but that's also where Cultivation is coming in handy, really, and Germination as well. When you're able to get those constant HOTS ticking in, especially when people are dropping to around 60%, Cultivation going out.
Morose now at 38% for Team Omegasniped. They will be ignoring the remaining 2 mobs, as we often see teams do, just making sure they deal well with their mechanics once again as well, baiting them away from the melee area so that there's not too much pressure on Zongo. Luffy having a bit of a tough time catching up. It actually goes down right now. They do have the Battle Res available, immediately getting up, but he's going to start falling behind here. I'm fired up. Ice blocking, fortunately, pretty low. Gets rid of his 5 stack of the Grievous and the Garrote stack as well. And Jack, I mean, the damage just starts to get pretty out of hand because the Garrote starts to spiral out of control into those Grievous stacks.
Yeah, and it actually puts even more pain onto Luffy when he does come back. He no longer has his Grievous stack, so immediately Morose is going to go back and focus him. So as he's trying to stabilize the entire situation, he is going to be interrupted, of course, by the Garrote stun going out there. So great move there by I'm Fired Up, just to be able to get into the ice block, give Luffy Goofy a little bit more breathing room for him. It's just such a huge boon for the healers when you're able to do that.
Yeah, certainly a good play by them. Team Omegasniped will now be heading through the kitchen area as we see a similar kind of strategy from Parse Culture. They do go through the kitchen area and jump down in the stables right next to Midnight. And I think they're just going to pull everything. It's really minutes to Midnight here. Omegasniped moving through the kitchen area as well, pulling some of these mobs. They will AoE them on the other side and then also jump down into that admin area. The big difference here being that Parse Culture hasn't killed Maiden yet.
Yeah, you're seeing team just falling out, boy, of there getting into the stables. You're seeing Parse Culture popping Lust, being able to grab everything in together from the stables here. And of course, you always have to be watching out for these burning brands, just dealing so much damage to everybody. So phenomenal positioning right here, keeping all the brands away from all the targets here as they are burning down Midnight and getting Adam and procced here. So it's also a dangerous pull that they're pulling off right now.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of damage coming in. They're handling it very well. Extra support from that consumption with all those targets coming in. So huge amounts of leech benefiting from the DK. Similar pull coming here from Team Omegasniped on the right side of the screen, pulling everything and popping that Bloodlust, doing well to handle it as well. Immediate Dispel comes out on that kind of apparition, that ghost that Adam and debuffs a player with, doing really well to control everything. And I mean, it just melts. Look at the damage up from the Fire Mage right now, hitting that 70 mil mark. Everything just melts, and now they're easily on Midnight, have already spawned Adam and getting off his high horse, getting ready to DPS him down. We do have a death, unfortunately, over on the side of Parse Culture, though.
Yeah, you're seeing he's just getting so fired up here, being able to eliminate all these mobs when he does have Bloodlust up here. And Omegasniped really playing so powerful here. You are seeing Big Kent going down and unable to actually be battle-rezzed. And this is really the pull that Parse Culture was really raring to do last time they were in this instance, but unfortunately were forced to really Bloodlust on Morose last time when they were on that 22 there because of the mana drain, just taking Feral Dog down. So even when they are getting kind of the pull that they really wanted here, it's just they're kind of getting chopped off at the knees when they're not able to actually get that extra battle res out onto Big Kent. And that also kind of goes to when we were seeing the Ushers upstairs actually killing Feral Dog there, and they actually had to expend the battle res there. That might have been one of the areas that could have been really setting them behind.
I mean, the thing with Parse Culture is this was probably really their trap card, and they played it face down. It didn't work out so well for them. They were probably planning on this huge pull that they overall executed pretty well, but guess what? Team Omegasniped is used to this pull. They've done it time and time again, and they executed it perfectly, just that much better than Parse Culture. Not to mention, of course, they didn't have the hiccup over on Maiden either. They do get Adamant off of Midnight one more time, start DPSing him down. I believe he has to get to 20 or 30%. Once he hits that threshold, he will not remount Midnight, even if it heals to 100%. At that point, they will just have to finish off Midnight, and they'll be taking the series.
Yeah, at this point, knocking Adamant off his high horse there, 20% left onto the boss, being able to actually get into that execute range, be able to take him down very swiftly there. Then, of course, like you said, they will have to deal with just Midnight alone, and at that point, it really will just be a straight burn. It's looking so strong here for Omegasniped with only 2 deaths.
Yeah, really good performance by them. Midnight now getting that buff, of course, where she deals, but also takes 100% increased damage. Should have absolutely no problem burning her down. They are 2% behind on trash. I'm sure it's not too much of a concern for them. They will just easily head upstairs and just pick up as many mobs as they can, trying to kill one as quickly as possible. Parse Culture here, even once they kill Midnight, will not only have 8% trash left. As the healer goes down, Feral Dog does go down, they will not only have to kill some trash, but they still have to go back to Maiden, too.
Yeah, it really shows, you know, as Omegasniped is trying to get that last 2% in terms of trash, that just when these things are, you know, when you mess up your strategy or when you are having those key wipes at crucial moments in Lower Karazhan, it really can set you back such a far way. And even as Omegasniped is going to take, you know, probably about an extra minute to be able to actually run all the way up the stairs, find one mob that they're going to be able to neutralize here, it just won't be enough time for Parse Culture to be able to kind of get back into this as Omegasniped is taking it with a swift 2-0.
I mean, just such a good performance, Mr. Rob.
Team Omegasniped kind of starting to put together this whole rule breaker run where their opponent picks a